Hello out there, and welcome to this late night live stream. Late night for me. I'm just gonna set some things up here as usual. Finally live. Maybe it's about 7 or 8 hours later than I originally planned, but there are some reasons for that, which I will get into briefly here in a moment before we begin with the main part of the stream. And as always, if you're watching this when it is not live, feel free to fast forward until this time 10 minutes because I'm gonna make some comments on some other things early on. I want to give myself time to do that, so I'll try to be in the main part of the material, the Seth stuff, the Seth stuff, at 10 minutes in. So if you want to skip my other comments in the opening things here, then skip my other comments in the opening things here, then go right ahead and skip to about 10 minutes in. Which hopefully I can wrap up my comments by then, but we'll see. I guess it all ties in a way. So how do we look and sound? Okay, we are good. All right, I have the title right. It looks like Analyzing Seth Speaks, Part 3, Chapters 4 through 5. Okay, good. Got the live chat on. Yeah, I'm hoping we can basically get through Chapters 4 and 5 tonight. If not, then I'll simply change the title after the fact. That's how I'm doing it. So I'm just gonna get the stream shared to my Twitter, and then I'll get right into my commentary. Twitter, and then there's a total of 3 reasons that I'm late here, but one of them is far more important than the other 2, so I'll say that one last. Let's see. Live looking. I never know what to say. I'm live reading / analyzing Seth Speaks. Okay. Getting that on Twitter now. All right, since it's so late, I'm almost not sure how the stream's gonna go, or who might watch, or if I'll even have very many people watching at this late hour or whatever, but it's fine, whatever. So anyway, so why am I late to the stream, you might wonder, or much later than I originally planned? Well, first of all, the first thing that happened is I woke up with my right eye all like messed up today, and as a result of that, I went back to sleep hoping that that would basically fix the problem, but it didn't. I woke up and my eye was still. I woke up later, a couple hours later, my eye was still messed up. Hang on, it's gonna drive me crazy if I don't double check this. Wait just a bit longer, please. If anyone is watching right now, I'm almost there. Okay, so yeah, that was an issue. My eye was bothering me. It's still bothering me now. I don't know. I guess I thought maybe, I thought at first, well, maybe I shouldn't go live, but that thought quickly changed to no. I said I was going to go live tonight, and so I'm going to, damn it. And so here I am. I can still see pretty much just fine. It's just, it's all, like right now I almost want to itch it or something, but no, I'm fine. It's nothing that hasn't happened before. I'm sure my eye will be back to normal by tomorrow. So that was the first thing. I ended up sleeping longer than usual because of that. I was trying to like heal my eye, but it didn't work. But it's okay because it's getting better. The next thing that happened is right when I finally was about to go live tonight, about to do this stream, I saw that my hair looked awful by then, and so I thought, okay, I need to go fix that up, and that turned into my deciding to take a shower and whatever. So that it didn't take that much more time, but that was a little bit more. But the thing that really made the difference, and the thing that I want to make some comments on before I get deep into this material, whether there's going to be anyone who ends up hearing them now or later or not or whatever, is that I discovered when I first woke up, and I knew this was coming, but I forgot about it, that over on the Game Theorists YouTube channel, one of my favorite channels here on YouTube, on GT Live today, they're doing a special charity live stream that was basically raising money for an organization that is researching better ways to treat mental illness, to understand the underlying causes of mental illness and develop better treatments for it. And so as a result of that, I did end up checking that out a little while after I had woken up, after I did my like spiritual practices and whatnot. And well, basically I was like, this is way too special of an occasion. And so and it wasn't even going to be on for that much longer by that point. And so I thought, well, I might as well just finish watching it then. It was too special of a thing for me to not watch. And so that's what I did. And I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to see what all happened. It was very exciting to me. And I also, I thought, geez, it would kind of, I don't know, it almost like it almost just wouldn't feel right with, like, if I went live while that live stream was going on, something so important, something dedicated to raising awareness about mental health and raising money to basically help develop better treatments for mental health, mental illnesses. And so I finished watching all of that, and their goal was $175,000, which they surpassed, and I think it was at like $193,000 after, or by the time the stream finally ended. And like, I guess 100% of that went to the organization that they were supporting in the stream. I forget the name of the organization, but you know, if you look this stuff up, I'm sure it's easy enough to find, and they're gonna have an archived version of it on their GT Live channel eventually. And I just thought, you know, it's interesting, and really why I want to make a point to say something about this at the beginning of the stream before we get into the main material is just that, well, I completely agree that mental health is a huge issue that needs to be looked at more. It needs to be taken seriously more. And that mental illness is a very real challenge that humanity is facing now and has faced for a very long time. I'm not sure if it's any worse these days, worse or better than it used to be. I don't know. I guess I wouldn't be an expert or wouldn't be one to know that for sure. And if anything, it seems like it's worse, but maybe that's just because we're more aware of it. But regardless, it needs more attention. It's a very real challenge, you know, anxiety, bipolar disorder, depression, you know, all of these things plague very many people, you know, and just challenging situations in day-to-day life and stuff like that. And geez, I see I'm running out of time before the 10-minute mark, but I'll try to wrap this up, I guess. Or if I have to go over time, then so be it. And you see, the thing is, it meant a lot to me as well, because in my own personal life, you know, I don't know if people are aware of this or not about me, based on the streams I've done and other stuff I've said before, but basically speaking, every day is a battle for me to stay in alignment, even with all this stuff that I've researched over the years and talked about over the years, especially more recently, all this spiritual stuff that I've studied and applied and all the processes and everything, even with all of that, every day is still a battle for me, ladies and gentlemen, to stay in alignment, to feel good, to be okay under the circumstances in which I live. Now, of course, things have gotten a lot better in that period of time, but and so it's like indeed this stuff is highly effective, but it's still a battle, you know. It's still one hell of a battle, and it's very helpful to see other people talking about it. So quick note, if you're watching this when it's not live and you fast forwarded, I'm not done with my comments yet, so you can fast forward some more if you want, or just continue to listen to this. What I'm saying right now is very important regarding mental health, I do think, so you might want to listen in. So it meant a lot to me that they were talking about that. And that's another reason that I think made me want to just keep watching the stream. It meant a lot to me that they were doing a stream dedicated to raising awareness for something like that and raising all that money for this organization that is working to help treat mental illness and understand it better, understand the underlying causes and whatnot. So it's a huge challenge, and I support it 100%. And you know, it's funny, like you might say, well, someone like Matthew Patrick, he and so many others have such a different angle on this stuff than say I do. And yet ultimately the funny thing about it is that really what that's talking about, mental health, and what I talk about are extremely similar. You know, Matthew Patrick, he's coming at it from this purely scientific perspective, at least as far as I can tell, whereas I'm coming at it from a far more like spiritual, subjective, perhaps even emotional perspective. And yet our goal is basically one and the same: the upliftment of people, the finding solutions to these mental health challenges that face so many people, the spreading positivity, the helping to make the world a better place, basically help to make the world better in whatever way that we can. You know, just because my methods of doing so and what, you know, following my excitement brings me and following my bliss brings me may be so different from his, doesn't mean that the end result or the goal, I guess, in general is so different. Because as I've explained before, I do these live streams, I do basically everything I do because I'm following my excitement, following my bliss. And so that is my number one priority. But I think a huge part of that, what brings me a lot of joy, is getting to be able to help people in whatever way that I can, be able to help people by sharing the knowledge I've gained over the years, and both through like actual studying and through my own experiences, you know, taking both of those, putting both of those together and sharing that with people to help uplift other people, because these are very real challenges and so many of us are facing them, including myself. And like I said, every day is a battle for me to stay in alignment, to be okay and to feel okay, you know. And it's like, yes, with all this spiritual stuff and everything I've learned over the years and applied, yes, it has gotten a lot better, but that doesn't mean I'm completely okay, you know. And in fact, I almost a lot of times I think, or at least sometimes, hesitate to say to people that that I've gotten a lot better, because it's like once I say that, that's almost implying that there isn't still some, you know, very serious challenges and things that I'm very much not okay with going on, when there are still very serious challenges that I am going through and experiencing, and things that I'm not okay with, you know. Just because I'm about 50% of the way doesn't mean that I might as well be like 99.9% of the way. No. There are still very real challenges, and I hate how I feel caught between like trying to be optimistic and say, yes, I am doing a lot better because it's true that I am, but then that's almost like implying that the challenges I face now must not be very important or something, when they are. They should be taken seriously. And I don't mean to try to make this sound all about me, because it isn't. And even I'm saying that. We all have challenges to face, some people far more than others, and I just think it's very important that people realize that this is a very real challenge that humanity is facing right now. I don't care who you are, I don't care what your perspective is. Overall, as a whole, humanity is facing a very big challenge right now regarding mental health and finding cures for mental illness. And it's something that we really ought to focus on finding the solutions to more, and support, good causes like what they had today on GT Live. Now technically yesterday, I guess, because it's so late at this point. Stuff like that needs to be supported. And so I'm not really sure what else to say about that, just that, mental illness is just as real as any kind of physical illness. Just because you can't see it with your eyes doesn't mean it isn't there. Something that should be easy enough for, I think, my viewers to understand when I'm sitting here talking about like vibration and, parallel realities and stuff all the time, and, the energy of astrological things and stuff like that. It should be very easy, at least for my viewers, I think, to understand that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. Mental health is a very real challenge, it's very real. And it needs to be taken seriously. What more can I say about it at this point? And I guess it's funny because you might think, well, this is kind of unrelated to what we're going to be talking about tonight with Seth Speaks, but actually it does tie in. It does, because I believe a huge part of the Seth material, and I think even why, I guess my theory anyway, at least on why Seth himself, if we're going to accept that Seth is a real entity, does what he does, shares all this knowledge, or shared all this knowledge through Jane Roberts all those years ago, is to help those who need help, is to help us meet these challenges, So you can call it spiritual, you can call it mental health, but ultimately it's pretty much the same thing. In my book, it is anyway. So I feel like I've said about all I need to say about that. It's very real. It's a challenge that I, sure as hell, am going to continue fighting to find the solution for. Being as solution-oriented as I can, both for my own life and for helping others as well in my own way. I'm not here to be like a scientist. I'm not here to be like a neurological researcher or whatever. But those people are doing what they are doing because that is the way in which they are contributing to the solution. I'm doing here what I'm doing because this is the way in which I contribute to the solution. And so we all contribute to the solution in our own way. And I think that's what's important, as we all continue to follow what excites us the most, what we're passionate about the most. It naturally leads us to the solution to these very real challenges. The challenges are there for a reason, and they're there to be overcome. They're not to be looked at as problems. They're to be looked at as challenges. But I guess I've said enough about that. And so now at about 19 and a half, almost 20 minutes in, we're going to get into the actual Seth material, the subject of the stream. And I hope all of that wasn't too scattered or anything. It's almost a little bit harder for me to focus with my eye still a little messed up, and I don't know, it's almost making me feel like more OCD about things or something, speaking of mental health challenges. But anyway, no, I'm basically all right. There's not even anyone here yet for those who watch this when it's not live. So it's not like there's a whole lot of pressure, although someone could get here at any moment, I guess. But yes, we are going to begin now with chapter 4 of Seth Speaks. And, well, where should I put the bookmark? Put it over here. And I guess, well, I hope people show up this late, but if not, that's okay, because, again, this will be available for watching when I'm not live. It'll be saved to my channel after, and people can watch it then and hopefully benefit from it. So, yes, here we are, Seth Speaks, the eternal validity of the soul. We're on chapter 4, entitled Reincarnational Dramas. So let's see if we can get through, hopefully at least chapters 4 and 5 tonight. All right, here we go. Chapter 4, Reincarnational Dramas. Session 521, March 30th, 1970, 9:08 p.m., Monday. Jane began speaking in an average voice at a good pace with few pauses. Now, good evening. Good evening, Seth. We will now begin our next chapter. It is, I believe, chapter 4. Yes. Your own environment includes far more than you may have supposed. Earlier, I referred to your environment in terms of the daily physical existence and surroundings with which you are currently connected. In actuality, you are aware of very little of your larger, more extensive environment. Consider your present self as an actor in a play. Hardly a new analogy, but a suitable one. The scene is set in the 20th century. You create the props, the settings, the themes. In fact, you write, produce, and act in the entire production. You and every other individual who takes part. You are so focused in your roles, however, so intrigued by the reality that you have created, so entranced by the problems, challenges, hopes, and sorrows of your particular roles, that you have forgotten they are of your own creation. This intensely moving drama, with all its joys and tragedies, can be compared with your present life, your present environment, both individually and en masse. But there are other plays going on simultaneously, in which you also have a part to play. These have their own scenery, their own props. They take place in different periods of time. One may be called Life in the 12th century AD. One may be called Life in the 18th century, or in 500 BC, or in AD 3000. You also create these plays and act in them. These settings also represent your environment, the environment that surrounds your entire personality. Greetings and salutations to you, Smiley Wolf. Don't worry, you didn't miss much. I had some announcements to make, and I literally just started reading chapter 4 like a minute ago, so you didn't really miss anything. Well, you did the announcements, but not the Seth material, at least. Okay. I am speaking of the portion of you who is taking part in this particular period piece, however, and that particular portion of your entire personality is so focused within this drama that you are not aware of the others in which you also play a role. You do not understand your own multidimensional reality, therefore it seems strange or unbelievable when I tell you that you live many existences at one time. It is difficult for you to imagine being in two places at once, much less in 2 or more times or centuries. Pause at 9:24. Now, stated simply, time is not a series of moments. The words that you speak, the acts that you perform, appear to take place underlined in time, as a chair or table appears to take up space. These appearances, however, are a part of the complicated props that you have set up, quote-unquote, beforehand, and within the play you must accept these as real. 4 o'clock in the afternoon is a very handy reference. You can say to a friend, I will meet you at 4 o'clock at the corner, or at a restaurant for a drink or a chat or a meal, and your friend will know precisely where and when he will find you. This will happen despite the fact that 4 o'clock in the afternoon has no basic meaning, but is an underlined agreed upon designation, a gentleman's agreement, if you prefer. If you attend the theater at 9 o'clock in the evening, but the actions of the play take place within the morning hours, and the actors are shown eating breakfast, you accept the time as given within the theater's play. You also pretend that it is morning. Whenever I hear that, greetings, salutations, I think of Jason Dean. Jason Dean. This may be a dumb moment on my part, but I don't think I know who that is. But maybe I should find out. Each of you are now involved in a much larger production, in which you all agree on certain basic assumptions that serve as a framework within which the play can occur. The assumptions are that time is a series of moments one after another, that an objective world exists quite independently of your own creation and perception of it, that you are bound within the physical bodies that you have donned, and that you are limited by time and space. 935. Other assumptions accepted for the same reason include the idea that all perception comes through your physical senses. In other words, that all information comes from without, and that no information can come from within. You therefore are forced to focus intensely upon the actions of the play. Now, these various plays, these creative period pieces, represent what you would call reincarnational lives. They all exist basically at one time. Those who are still involved in these highly complicated passion play seminars, called reincarnational existences, find it difficult to see beyond them. Some, resting between productions, as it were, try to communicate with those who are still taking part, but they themselves are merely in the wings, so to speak, and can only see so far. The plays seem to be taking place one before the other, and so these communications seem to intensify the false idea that time is a series of moments, passing in a single line from some inconceivable beginning to some equally inconceivable end. Are your fingers tired? No, it was 9:42. This leads you to think in terms of a very limited progress, both in individual terms and in terms of your species as a whole. You think, those of you who have even considered reincarnation, well, certainly the race must have progressed from the time of the Middle Ages, although you greatly fear it is not. Or you turn to technological progress and say, at least we have come a long way in that direction. You may smile and think to yourself that it is quite difficult to imagine a Roman senator addressing the multitudes through a microphone, for example, his children watching his performance on television, but all of this is highly misleading. Progress does not exist in the terms that you consider it to, any more than time does. So I'm going to try to explain this idea of time real quick, because of time being like this thing other than that which we as humans tend to think that it is. Because when I first encountered this concept, it took me forever to wrap my mind around it, but I think I kind of sort of have it right at this point, or at least I think I've reached something much closer to the reality of things. And I think it's like this. So if you can imagine that time itself is like an attribute of reality, and if you can imagine that like our source energy or the overall like entity of which we are a part, like the larger non-physical part of us is existing outside of time, then you could almost imagine time as something that you just slip into in each individual incarnation. And so, yes, you could choose to incarnate in the year 1990. You could choose to incarnate in the year 1000. You could choose to incarnate in the year 2500. And so it's like time is just within the time as we think of it anyway, is within the realm of the like physical reality that you incarnate into. And one way of thinking of it that also kind of helps me is actually comparing it to like a video game, because it's like you as a player enter into a video game and say that the video game, that you're playing in takes place at a certain time, right? A time in the context of the game, like a time period in the game itself, but you are existing completely outside of that time. And so it's like, well, say you have, let's see, not to get too video game-y on you all, but say you have a couple different save files on one video game. I guess gamers out there will get this much better than other people, but if you're not a gamer, bear with me. So say you have several different save files on one video game. Each save file has taken place in a different time. And it could also be that each save file, more or less time has passed than other save files by comparison. Like in one save file, maybe 5 hours have passed, and another save file, 5 days have passed. But as far as you, outside of the game, you, the player, are concerned, all of those are existing at the same time. And so our physical lives are like those individual save files, right? And like, no analogy is perfect, but I think it kind of gets the idea across that like outside of this like game that we are playing in physical reality, indeed, all time is basically simultaneous. But within the context of the game that we are playing, it appears that we do have like sequential events. I mean, we do, but it's a question of, it's a matter of that being an attribute of the game we're playing. Whereas if we could step outside of this physical reality, we would see, well, you know, it's all existing at once, just like all of our so-called past lives are all existing at once. You could think of past lives as like past save files in the game, right? They're all existing at once. And same with future lives being like future save files, all existing at once. So that's just how I've kind of come to intuitively understand it as I've thought about this stuff a lot over time. And I guess also, you know, being someone who almost obsessively plays Skyrim so much, I was bound to come to that kind of conclusion, that kind of analogy, I guess. Wait, by the way, I think I really have to find the book. Whatever part of the book you read, I relate with it so much. Oh, cool, smiley. Yeah, just go on Amazon and search Seth Speaks, Jane Roberts, or even just Seth Speaks should bring it up. And as you can see in the title, we're on chapter 4 currently. So yeah, I don't know if they have it in ebook format or not, but I'm sure they'll have the physical book. Sip some tea here. Let's see here. Where were we? Oh, there we are. Wait. You like physical books much better? Me too. Like, I'll read ebooks and they are useful to me in their ways, but I think I still prefer physical books overall because there's just something more like real about them. I don't know, I just like them better. Progress does not exist in the terms that you consider it to any more than time does. Yes, that's where we left off. Okay. In each play, both individually and en masse, different problems are set up. Progress can be measured in terms of the particular ways in which those problems were solved or not solved. Great advances have been made in certain periods. For example, great offshoots appeared that, from your viewpoint, you might not consider progress at all. You may take your break. 9:51. Jane left trance quickly. Wow, she said. Seth's going to have an awful lot to say about that. I can feel it up here. She touched her forehead. Every so often I get a huge sweep of something that I can't put into words. Do you know what I mean? But he's going to break it down for us. It's funny, she continued. I didn't feel particularly psychic tonight, but the material's good. That's happened before, too. When there's someone here that I don't like, or they turn me off for some reason, then we won't have a session. The material won't come through. But I don't need to feel psychic when we're here alone. The material just comes through no matter what, and it's always good. Let's see. Just thought I saw like a little particle in my book, but I guess it's something that's printed on the page. All right. Jane resumed at a slower pace at 10:15. Now, incidentally, in parentheses, humorously, You need not record this. My nows beginning a sentence are often simply cues to you and need not necessarily go along with our script. This happens over and over again in this book. Seth will say things like that, or maybe not over and over again, but often enough. Like every little thing that Seth says, Rob, who's taking the notes, he always takes it down and includes it in the book. And the only exceptions basically being punctuation, like when Seth says how to punctuate something. And if it's like an informal session and Rob ends up not taking notes, other than that, it's like he always wants to include every little thing that Seth says, which I find kind of funny because I'm not sure if that's how Seth intended his book to be, but whatever. So anyway, yeah, Seth says, now, incidentally, humorously in parentheses, you need not record this. My nows beginning a sentence are often simply cues to you and need not necessarily go along with our script. And then Rob says, okay, I understand. Now back to Seth. Underlined now, humorously louder. In some plays, generally speaking, the actors are each working on a seemingly minute portion of a larger problem that the play itself is to resolve. Though I use the analogy here of a drama, these quote-unquote plays are highly spontaneous affairs in which the actors have full freedom underlined within the play's framework. And granting these assumptions that have been stated, there are no rehearsals. There are observers, as you will see later in our book. As in any good theater production, there is an overall theme within each play. The great artists, for example, did not emerge out of a particular time simply because they were born into it, or, parentheses, because the conditions were favorable. Wait, I can't say I understand time, but I do think it's true that everything happens at the same time, past, present, and future. This is because I think I did succeed in healing some relationships by focusing in the present, no matter how much negativity there was in the past. Ah, yes, that's interesting. Yeah, I think so too. I think everything does happen at the same time. And I also have a theory that we can basically change the past from the present in a way, since all time is simultaneous, and it may very well be that what we call our past is just one version of an infinite number of probable realities. And so we can actually change the past from the present, but the only thing that prevents us from doing that is that we typically don't believe that we can. But yeah, focusing in the present moment, that helps a lot in healing of relationships and stuff like that, or it helps a lot with everything really, I guess. Let's see. In parentheses, according to Seth, each individual chooses the time and place of every quote-unquote life in his reincarnational cycle, end parentheses. The play itself was concerned with the actualization of intuitive truth into what you would call artistic form, with a creativity of such vast and sweeping results that it would serve to awaken latent abilities within each actor and to serve as a model of behavior. Periods of renaissance, spiritual, artistic, or psychic, occur because the intense inner focus of those involved in the drama are directed toward those ends. The challenge may be different in each play, but the great themes are beacons to all consciousness. They serve as models. 10:17. Progress has nothing to do with time, you see, but with psychic and spiritual focus. Each play is entirely different from any other. It is not correct, therefore, to suppose that your actions in this life are underlined caused by a previous existence, or that you are being punished in this life for crimes in a past one. The lives are simultaneous. Your own multidimensional personality is so endowed that it can have these experiences and still retain its identity. It is, of course, affected by the various plays in which it takes part. There is instant communication and an instant, if you prefer, feedback system. These plays are hardly without purpose. In them, the multidimensional personality learns through its own actions. It tries out an endless variety of poses, behavior patterns, attitudes, and changes others as a result. The word result, you see, automatically infers cause and effect, the cause happening before the effect, and this is simply one small example of the strength of such distortions and of the inherent difficulties involved with verbal thought, for it always implies a single-line delineation. 1026. You are the multidimensional self who has these existences, who creates and takes part in these cosmic passion plays, so to speak. It is only because you focus in this particular role now that you identify your entire being with it. You have set these rules for yourself for a reason, and consciousness is in a state of becoming, and so this multidimensional self of which I speak is not a psychological structure completed and done with. It is also in a state of becoming. It is learning the art of actualization. It has within it infinite sources of creativity, unlimited possibilities of development, but it has yet to learn the means of actualization, and must find within itself ways to bring into existence those untold creations that are within it. 1032. Therefore, it creates varieties of conditions in which to operate, and sets itself challenges, some doomed to failure in your terms, at least initially, because it must first create the conditions which will bring new creations about. And all of this is done with great spontaneity and unbounded joy. Pause. You therefore create far more environments than you realize. Now, each actor, going about the role, focused within the play, has an inner guideline. He is not left, therefore, abandoned within a play that he has forgotten in his own creation. He has knowledge and information that comes to him through what I call the inner senses. 1039, long pause. He has other sources of information, therefore, than those strictly given within the confines of the production. Each actor knows this instinctively, and there are periods set and allowed for within the play itself in which each actor retires in order to refresh himself. In these, he is informed through the inner senses of his other roles, and he realizes that he is far more than the self appearing in any given play. In these periods, he understands that he had his hand in the writing of the play, and he is freed from those assumptions that bind him while he is actively concerned with the drama's activities. These periods, of course, coincide with your sleep states and dreaming conditions, but there are also other times when each actor sees quite clearly that he is surrounded by props, and when his vision suddenly pierces the seeming reality of the production. 1044. This does not mean that the play is underlined not real, or that it should not be taken seriously. It does mean playing a role, an important one. Each actor must of himself realize, however, the nature of the production and his part in it. He must actualize himself out of the three-dimensional confines of the play's setting. There is great cooperation behind such momentous productions, and in playing his role, each actor first actualizes underlined himself within three-dimensional reality. The multi-dimensional self cannot act within three-dimensional reality until it materializes a portion of itself within it. Do you follow me? Yes. Within this reality, it then brings about all kinds of creativity and development that, underlined, could not appear otherwise. It must then propel itself from the system, however, through another act, another actualization on the part of itself that, underlined, is three-dimensional. And let me analyze that a bit more real quick. Within this reality, it then brings about all kinds of creativity and development that could not appear otherwise. It must then propel itself from the system, however, through another act, another actualization on the part of itself that is three-dimensional. I've been studying the Seth material for, I guess, technically years now, and still some of the stuff is a little bit hard for me to wrap my mind around completely. Within this reality then brings about all kinds of creativity and development that could not appear otherwise. So it's completely unique to that reality. Interesting. During its three-dimensional existence, it has helped others in ways that they could not otherwise be helped, and it has been itself benefited and developed in ways that would be impossible otherwise. I suggest your break. 10:55. Jane's trance had been deep. Resume at 11:02. See, I'm going to review some of this myself there real quick. Great cooperation behind such momentous productions, and in playing his role, each actor first actualizes himself within three-dimensional reality. The multi-dimensional self cannot act within three-dimensional reality until it materializes a portion of itself within it. So I think it's like saying that the physical human must first become actualized within physical reality before the non-physical part can, let's see, how did Seth put it? Before the non-physical part can act within three-dimensional reality. So I think it's like saying that physical part must become actualized first, and then that is indeed how the non-physical, again, how did Seth put it? Acts within three-dimensional reality. So anyway, resume at 11:02. Now, the meaning of the play is within you, therefore. It is only the conscious portion of you that acts so well, and that is focused so securely within the props of the production. The purpose of any given life is available to you. And again, I'm going to analyze this. The meaning of the play is within you, therefore. It is only the conscious portion of you that acts so well, and that is focused so securely within the props of the production. As if saying that the inner self is always aware of the deeper meaning of the play, which the play being physical life. Interesting. And it's the conscious mind that is so like hypnotized by physical reality that it doesn't realize that it's in a play or a game or whatever. So anyway, the purpose of any given life is available to you, the knowledge beneath the surface of the conscious self you know. All kinds of hints and clues are also available. You have the knowledge of your underlined entire multidimensional personality at your fingertips. Underlined when you realize that you do, this knowledge allows you to solve the problems or meet the challenges you have set quicker in your terms, and also opens further areas of creativity by which the entire play or production can be enriched. So that's another way of saying that by realizing who you really are and connecting with that broader perspective, that broader source energy, and realizing that you're in a play, the whole play itself or your whole life itself becomes greatly enriched, and whole new areas of creative development are opened up as a result of that realization of your spiritual nature. 11:08. To the extent, therefore, that you allow the intuitions and knowledge of the multidimensional self to flow through the conscious self, to that extent, not only do you perform your role in the play more effectively, but also you add new energy, insights, and creativity to the entire dimension. Now it seems to you, of course, that you are the only conscious part of yourself, for you are identifying with the actor in this particular production. The other portions of your multidimensional personality in these other reincarnational plays are also conscious, however. And because you underlined are a multidimensional consciousness, quote unquote, you are also conscious in other realities beside these. Your multidimensional personality, your true identity, the real you, is conscious of itself, as itself, in any of these roles. So let's let that sink in. Your multidimensional personality, your true identity, the real you, is conscious of itself as itself in any of these roles. End of dictation. Now give us a moment. After a pause, Seth went on to give us both some answers to personal questions. Do you have further questions? No, I guess not. It's getting late. Then I will indeed bring our session to a close with my heartiest regards to you both. Good night, Seth, and thank you. 11:24 p.m. Seth's production of his book had come to be a natural part of the framework by now. He was also beginning to deviate somewhat from the outline he'd given in the 510th session on January 10th, 1970, but we had expected this. Seth was on his own, Jane said, Many people knew about his book by now. A note added later. Except for one instance, Seth was to give many more chapters after the session before Jane looked at the book again. All right. That's the end of that session. So I'm going to take a sip of tea. Session 522, April 8th, 1970, 9:13 p.m., Wednesday. Now, good evening. Good evening, Seth. We will continue. These quote-unquote period pieces, overall, have a particular purpose. By the very nature of consciousness, it seeks to materialize itself in as many dimensions as possible, to create from itself new levels of awareness, new offshoots. In doing so, it creates all reality. Reality, therefore, is always in a state of becoming. The thoughts that you think, for example, in your actors' roles, are still completely unique and lead to new creativity. Certain aspects of your own consciousness could be fulfilled in no other way. When you think of reincarnation, you suppose a series of progressions. Instead, the various lives grow out of what your inner self is. They are not thrust upon you by some outside agency. They are a material development, as your consciousness opens up and expresses itself in as many ways as possible. It is not restricted to one three-dimensional lifetime, nor is it restricted to a three-dimensional existence alone. That actually says, nor is it restricted to three-dimensional existence alone. Your consciousness then takes many forms, and these forms need not be alike any more, say, than a caterpillar is like a butterfly. The soul or entity has complete freedom of expression. It changes its form to suit its expression, and it forms environments like stage settings, and worlds to suit its purposes. Each setting brings forth new developments. Parentheses, Jane was taking many more pauses. The soul or entity is highly individualized spiritual energy. It forms whatever body you now wear, and is the motive power behind your physical survival, for from it you derive your vitality. Consciousness can never be still, but seeks further creativity. I think that idea in and of itself is also very interesting, that if what Seth is saying here is true, then it's like, there really is no end to creative development. There really is no end to time in the way that we think of it. There's always going to be new areas of creative development. There's always going to be expansion, and like new ideas, new desires are all the stuff that eternity is made of. And so I think that's so fascinating that we're just in this, if again what Seth is saying here is true, we're in this endless expanding I don't know what the word would be, this endless expanding framework of probabilities and creative development, and it literally goes on for eternity and like plays off of itself, like grows out of itself. It's so interesting. All right, let's see, where were we? 928. The soul, therefore, or entity, endows three-dimensional reality and the three-dimensional self with its own properties. The abilities of the entity lie within the three-dimensional self. The three-dimensional self, the actor, has access to this information and to these potentials. In learning to use these potentials, in learning to rediscover its relationship with the entity, the three-dimensional self raises still further the level of achievement, comprehension, and creativity. The three-dimensional self becomes more than it knows. Let's focus in on that some more. I guess I call these streams Analyzing Seth Speaks for a reason, because I don't want to just read it. I want to try to like dig at least a little bit deep into the material. So let's really think about this. The soul, therefore, or entity, endows three-dimensional reality and the three-dimensional self with its own properties. The abilities of the entity lie within the three-dimensional self. The three-dimensional self, the actor, has access to this information and to these potentials. So So the physically focused self always has access to the knowledge and how does Seth put it? Abilities of the larger self, or the non-physical part of you. So yes, three-dimensional self, the actor, has access to this information and to these potentials. In learning to use these potentials and learning to rediscover its relationship with the entity, the three-dimensional self raises still further the level of achievement, comprehension, and creativity. The three-dimensional self becomes more than it knows. So talking about, I guess, almost the idea of enlightenment even. The three-dimensional self achieves and becomes more by finding alignment with and understanding of its own source energy. Not only is the entity strengthened, but portions of it, having been actualized in three-dimensional existence, now add to the very quality and nature of that existence. Without this creativity, planetary life in your terms would always be sterile. The soul or entity then gives breath to the body and to the three-dimensional self within it. The three-dimensional self then goes about its purpose of opening up new areas of creativity. Entities or souls, in other words, send out portions of themselves to open up avenues of reality that would not exist otherwise. Long pause at 9:39. The three-dimensional selves, in existing within these realities, must focus their attention there completely. An inner awareness gives them a source of energy and strength. They must, however, come to understand their roles as actors, quote unquote, finally, from their roles, and through another act of comprehension, return to the entity. There are those who appear within these plays fully aware. These personalities willingly take roles, knowing that they are roles, in order to lead the others toward the necessary realization and development. They lead the actors to see beyond the selves and settings they have created. These personalities from other levels of existence oversee the play, so to speak, and appear among the actors. Their purpose is to open up within the three-dimensional selves those psychological doorways that will release the three-dimensional self for further development in another system of reality. Now you may take your break, and we shall continue. 9:50. Jane's trance had been relatively light. Resume at 9:58. So that's really interesting right there, what Seth was saying. So, and I think he gets a lot more into this later, but this idea that there are personalities like incarnate in the physical reality here with us that, according to Seth at least, are aware of their greater multidimensional nature and literally chose that to help other people who are not aware to become aware of the larger parts of themselves, to become aware of who they really are and stuff like that. And so that's interesting stuff. And I know for a fact Seth gets into another topic. I don't want to spoil it, I guess, but another topic later in this book that goes right along those lines. So we'll get to that soon enough. 9:50. Jane's trance had been relatively light. Resume at 9:58. Now, you are learning to be co-creators. You are learning to be gods as you now understand the term. You are learning responsibility, the responsibility of any individualized consciousness. You are learning to handle the energy that is yourself for creative purposes. You will be bound to those you love and those you hate, though you will learn to release and lose and dissipate the hatred. You will learn to use even hatred creatively and to turn it to the higher ends, to transform it finally into love. I will make this clearer in later chapters. The settings in your physical environment, the sometimes lovely paraphernalia, the physical aspects of life as you know it, are all camouflages, and so I call your physical reality a camouflage. Yet these camouflages are composed of the vitality of the universe. The rocks and stones and mountains and earth are living camouflage, interlocking psychic webs formed by minute consciousnesses that you cannot perceive as such. The atoms and molecules within them have their own consciousness, as do the atoms and molecules with your body. I want to go back to what Seth said a little bit ago, though, about being bound to those you love and those you hate. And and he does indeed get into this more later in the book, as he says. But like, I just want to make the note here. It's so interesting because indeed, I think it's true, at least in this life, but it probably is true for all lives, that you will be bound to those that you hate. And I think that's a reason that hatred itself can be so dangerous and so insidious. And when people choose to succumb to hate and get wrapped up in hate and believe themselves justified in their hate, well, they will be bound to the object of their hatred. Now, isn't that interesting? So you can't hate someone enough to make them go away, and you can't hate some condition enough to make it go away. You have to transform that hatred into love, or at least transform it through various stages perhaps, and then finally into love, if you want to be free of what you don't want. And Seth talks about using hatred creatively, and I believe that is indeed something you can do, through like analyzing your beliefs in particular and realizing what is it behind the hatred. And even as I've talked about in these streams before, the idea of moving up the emotional scale. That's about the only time I would advise people to deliberately focus on hatred, is if you're using it as a stepping stone to get to less and less negative vibrations, and then eventually higher and higher vibrations. That's the only exception that I would say, is using it as a stepping stone. Same for revenge and all other negative emotions, basically speaking. But as for people who get wrapped up and consumed in their hatred, if they keep going down that path, it will only bring them pain. It will only bring them sorrow. And same with like revenge. A path of vengeance will only lead to more pain. And I understand why people go down those paths, because they feel so disempowered that they feel like that is the only way that they can get their power back. But they need to understand the game that's actually being played, because if they just stay in hatred or revenge, it's just going to lead to more and more pain, and things are just going to get worse and worse for them. They have to find a way to rise above that, to transmute that energy and find alignment with who they really are. It's something I don't want to admit, but it's true. The idea of hatred. Yeah, it's frustrating, because if you're trying to take your power back, if you feel so powerless that you feel like engaging in hatred, then technically it is a step in the right direction. And so it can be very frustrating. It can be like, well, why does it feel better to hate in that case? And it's because you are technically getting some of your power back if you're going from, say, depression to hatred. But you're still in hatred. You've still got to rise above that. You can't stay there and expect your life to improve, basically speaking. You can't stay there and expect to be happy and all right. But it's what I'm wanting to say, though, is I understand why people resort to that kind of negativity. They're desperately trying to get their power back, and they don't know of any better way to do it. So, like, I'm not justifying it, and it doesn't make it right, but it's just that I understand why they do what they do. So where were we? 10:07. Since you all have a hand in forming this physical setting, and since you are ensconced yourself in a physical form, then using the physical senses, you will only perceive this fantastic setting. The reality that exists both within it and beyond it will elude you. Even the actor is not entirely three-dimensional, however. He is a part of a multidimensional self. Within him, there are methods of perception that allow him to see through the camouflage settings, to see beyond the stage. He uses these inner senses constantly, though the actor part of himself is so intent upon the play that this escapes him. In a large manner, the physical senses actually form the physical reality they seem to only perceive. They are themselves part of the camouflage, but they are like lenses over your natural inner perceptions that force you to quote-unquote see an available field of activity as physical matter, and so they can be relied upon only to tell you what is happening in a superficial manner. You can tell the position of the other actors, for example, or time by clock, but these physical senses will not tell you that time is itself a camouflage, or that consciousness forms the other actors, or that realities that you underlined cannot see exist over and beyond the physical matter that underlined is so apparent. Let's see, let's focus in on that. These physical senses will not tell you that time is itself a camouflage, or that consciousness forms the other actors, or that realities that you cannot see exist over and beyond the physical matter that is so apparent. Yeah, basically saying how your physical senses aren't giving you the full picture. Your physical senses cannot perceive these other realities, and yet these other realities have just as much validity as the reality that our senses can perceive. So interesting. Because as I said, I'm very attached to my ego, so even though I know something that might make my life better, my personality would sometimes prevent me from doing it. You know, I think I know exactly what you mean. I really think I do. Because I mean, if it isn't obvious to people by now, like from my streams and everything, I can be a very rebellious and defiant person when I feel like it's called for. And obviously, like, the source within me is not going to be like that. Like, source isn't going to resist anything. At least I don't believe that it ever would. Not to my understanding. But it's interesting. This is an idea I've been exploring more often recently. It's like, could that be a theme that I came here to explore, that I chose to explore? I think it very well is. And another thing I realized recently is, think about it. If it weren't for some negative beliefs, people wouldn't even be able to have certain kinds of experience in physical reality that are perfectly valid and like worth experiencing. Like, think of the person who is deeply comforted by seeing someone else express struggles similar to what they are going through. Well, the experience of that deep comforting is a valid experience, and one worth exploring, I would argue, on the part of consciousness, but it requires some negative beliefs in order to have that experience. So I'm not wanting to encourage negative beliefs when those are the very things that are basically keeping us from everything that we want and from much better lives and whatnot. But I'm also wanting to point out that I don't even know how to say this. It's like, maybe it's not so bad that we have some negative beliefs. Maybe we shouldn't be wanting to eradicate them all so quickly and only have positive beliefs, when having some negative beliefs may very well be, and probably is, actually facilitating the very kinds of life experiences that we're having and that we wanted to have, that we incarnated into the physical reality to have. And if we didn't want to have them, we would have stayed in non-physical. Like, if we wanted to just be all positive and blissful all the time, then why would we have stayed in non-physical? I think that we have incarnated into physical human bodies to have human experiences, generally speaking. And obviously there's going to be a huge variance in that, some people wanting to have far more difficult experiences, some people wanting to have far easier experiences, relatively speaking, but generally speaking, all of them being human experiences. So, and that's my latest theory, is that basically even negative beliefs can be used in a positive way, and often are, even without us consciously doing it. Like, we don't even realize that, like, our inner self or whatever is using our own negative beliefs in a positive way. That's my theory at this point. So, where were we? Okay. You can, however, using your inner senses, perceive reality as it exists apart from the play and your role in it. In order to do this, you must, of course, momentarily at least, turn your attention away from the constant activity that is taking place. Turn off the physical senses, as it were, and switch your attention to those events that have escaped you earlier. Let's see. I should probably take a sip of tea. Tea with honey to hopefully keep my voice strong for this reading. 10:20. Highly simplified indeed, the effect would be something like changing one set of glasses for another, for the physical senses are as artificial, basically speaking, to the inner self as a set of glasses or a hearing aid is to the physical self. The inner senses, therefore, are but rarely used, underlined completely, consciously. So that's fascinating. Something like changing one set of glasses for another. The physical senses are as artificial, basically speaking, to the inner self as a set of glasses or a hearing aid is to the physical self. So yeah, that's fascinating. Like talking about turning your attention like within and trying to use what Seth is calling these inner senses that are different from your physical senses. And he's comparing the physical senses to like what for us would be like glasses or hearing aids, just sort of ways of perceiving other things, but there's much more to be perceived, basically. So that's interesting. Right. My Scorpio moon is strong, so I don't forgive people easily. If someone done me wrong, I can't forget that I might forgive. I don't want to get revenge, but I don't think I'll ever be able to love that person. Yes, I do think that too. We're here for a reason. I always say that. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Like, let's see, don't forgive people easily. If someone can't forgive that, I might forgive. I don't want to get revenge, but I don't think I'll ever be able to love that person. Yeah, I know what you mean because, see, here's the thing. Like for you, like you say, you think it's your Scorpio moon, and I think that makes total sense. Yes, probably is. Like for me, I think it's my Sun Saturn conjunction in Capricorn that that makes me have a huge problem with forgiveness. Also, like I definitely like hear what you're saying there because but for me, I guess it's more of an issue of morality. Like whenever I see someone commit some kind of immoral behavior, especially if it's towards me personally, I can't really say I'm that interested in forgiving them. Like I might forgive them if they're lucky, but I will always hold them accountable, or at least that's the kind of state and vibration I'm in now. Like I will always hold people accountable for their behavior. That doesn't mean I'll like hate them. That doesn't mean that I can never like be friends with them or have a positive relationship with them. But I'm never going to forget. I will always hold them accountable for their behavior. I might forgive if they're lucky, but I sure as hell am not going to forget. And yes, I recognize that is probably not the way my source energy sees it. And yet I just feel so called to this point of view. And I think it's because, again, the Sun Saturn conjunction, like basically that means that I associate the idea of myself with Saturn things. And so we're talking karma, we're talking you get what you deserve, we're talking justice, we're talking punishment, we're talking the things that you do at any point in time matter. We're talking consequences and repercussions. And it's like, I've got to say to the world, I'm sorry, but as much as I like being a spiritual person and a spiritual being, I am still a Sun Saturn in Capricorn person, a Sun Saturn conjunction in Capricorn person. And I'm going to hold people accountable for what they do, for their immoral behavior, because that's who I am. I'm not going to let you get off easily. You're not getting off easily with Poetic Heretic. It's like I may be the spiritual person, yes, but I'm still Poetic Heretic, and you're not going to get off easily with me. It's just not going to happen. unless your immoral act is so tiny that it's basically insignificant, then I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. But yeah, and I guess my being a Libra rising also, and that sign's association, strong association with justice, including ruling the Justice card in tarot, makes me very like justice minded and stuff like that. So I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, if someone engages in immoral behavior, I remember it and I hold them accountable because they are accountable and they are guilty for doing something that is very wrong. And yes, that is my judgment. And if people don't like it, well, I guess that's tough. You know, they're free to form their own opinions, but that's my opinion perspective. So, indeed. I don't think I'll worry if you hate me though. You're so harmless, lol. Well, first of all, I wouldn't hate you. I wouldn't have a reason to hate you. But second of all, I don't know if I'd say I'm harmless. I don't know if you've seen me at my angriest yet. Hopefully, you never do. But I don't know if I'm harmless. Like, I could tell you stories that would make you think of me in a very different way. But we won't get into that right here live on stream. But yeah, I guess maybe in everyday life when I'm in a calm and like in alignment state, then I'm harmless. But I'm not harmless all the time. But anyway, so let's resume reading. You would be more than disoriented, for example, but quite terrified if between one moment and the next your familiar environment as you knew it disappeared to be replaced by other sets of data that you were not ready to understand. So much information from the inner senses must be translated in terms that you can comprehend. Such information must somehow make sense to you as three-dimensional selves, in other words. Your particular set of camouflages is not the only set you see. Other realities have entirely different systems, but all personalities have inner senses that are attributes of consciousness. And through these inner senses, communications are maintained about which the normally conscious self knows little. Part of my purpose is to make some of these communications known. Let me focus in more on this as well. Your particular set of camouflages is not the only set you see. Other realities have entirely different systems, but all personalities have inner senses that are attributes of consciousness. All personalities have inner senses that are attributes of consciousness, okay? And through these inner senses, communications are maintained about which the normally conscious self knows little. The inner self communicating with other realities or other parts of itself or other selves, if you want to put it in those terms, I guess. Part of my purpose is to make some of these communications known. But of course, I don't know you, just the overall impression I have with Capricorn people. Yes, that's true. Yeah, us Capricorns tend to be very like calm and like mellow and stuff. Just don't ever back one of us into a corner though. Like, I think that's not just true for me, but Capricorns in general. Like, then things might get intense. Right? They may get angry, but Capricorn people don't really go psycho like Scorpio. They can control themselves well. Yes, that's another good point. Yeah, absolutely. Capricorns can control themselves very well. And I think that's really the reason that people even think that I'm as stable as I am, like emotionally. Like, I was saying this at the beginning of the stream before you got here, but like I was saying how like basically I'm not exactly emotionally stable. Like I was saying, every day is a battle for me to stay in alignment and stuff like that. I think I appear much more emotionally stable than I probably am, but that probably is because of my Capricorn nature. But on the other hand, I do have very strong aspects to Pluto in my chart, which rules Scorpio. And so I have that all or nothing extreme tendency, or at least potential within me as well. But I agree. I don't think for me it manifests as ever really going psycho on someone. Not going to say it's impossible. I mean, if I really felt disempowered enough, there's no telling what I might do. But yeah, I think for the most part, that's fortunately my Capricorn energy keeps me like mostly under control. All right, let's see. 1029. The soul or entity, then, is not the self that reads this book. Your environment is not simply the world about you as you know it, but also consists of past life environments upon which you are not now focusing. Your real environment is composed of your thoughts and emotions, for from these you form not only this reality, but each reality in which you take part. Long pause. Your real environment is innocent of space and time as you know them. In your real environment, you have no need for words, for communication is instantaneous. In your real environment, you form the physical world that you know. The inner senses will allow you to perceive the reality that is independent of physical form. I will ask you all to momentarily forsake your roles, therefore, and try this simple exercise. Now you may take your break. Take a break. Okay. Let's see. Yes, I have that all or nothing aspect too. Yeah, that is Scorpio energy all the way, as I'm sure you know. Like Scorpio ruled by Pluto, all or nothing indeed. Just funny, some of my favorite YouTubers are Scorpios, interestingly enough. So I guess I resonate well with that energy. So I need a tissue real quick, so I'll be right back. All right, let's get right back to it. "10:36. Jane's trance had been deeper this time. I know I wasn't in as deep the first time, she said, because I heard that siren. A fire engine had passed a couple of blocks away from our house at about 9:30. Only now did Jane remember to tell me she'd heard it. I worry when I hear things like that while Seth's writing his book. I don't want to mess anything up. Resume at 10:53. Now, pretend that you are on a lighted stage, the stage being the room in which you now sit. Close your eyes and pretend that the lights have gone out, the setting has disappeared, and you are alone. Everything is dark. Be quiet. Imagine as vividly as you can the existence of inner senses. For now, pretend that they correspond to your physical ones. Clear from your mind all thoughts and worries. Be receptive. Very gently listen, not to physical sounds, but to sounds that come through the inner senses. Images may begin to appear. Accept them as sights quite as valid as those you see physically. Pretend that there is an inner world, and that it will be revealed to you as you learn to perceive it with these inner senses. 10:58. Pretend that you have been blind to this world all your life, and are now slowly gaining sight within it. Do not judge the whole inner world by the disjointed images that you may at first perceive, or by the sounds that you may at first hear, for you will still be using your inner senses quite imperfectly. Do this simple exercise for a few moments before sleep or in the resting state. It may also be done even in the midst of an ordinary task that does not take all of your attention. You will simply be learning to focus in a new dimension of awareness, taking quick snapshots, as it were, in a strange environment. Remember that you will only be perceiving snatches. Simply accept them, but do not attempt to make any overall judgments or interpretations at this stage. 10 minutes a day to begin with is quite sufficient. Now the information in this book is being directed to some extent through the inner senses of the woman who is in trance as I write it. Such endeavor is the result of highly organized inner precision and of training. Rupert could not receive the information from me. It could not be translated nor interpreted while she was focused intensely in the physical environment. So the inner senses are channels that provide communication between various dimensions of existence. Yet even here the information must be distorted to some extent as it is translated into physical terms. Otherwise it would not be perceived at all. End of dictation. Do you have questions? Nothing in particular, I guess. Whenever you want a less formal session or have questions, then let me know. I will Humorously, I am willing to take time out from my writing chores. I know it. My heartiest good wishes then, and a fond good evening. Good evening, Seth. Thank you very much. 11:10 p.m. All right, and that concludes that session. Let's see. Capricorn is very loved by pretty much my entire family. My sister wishes she would marry a Capricorn guy someday. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I guess us Capricorns can have a reputation for being kind of boring. I personally don't see that, but then again, I am a Capricorn, so I don't know. Maybe I just can't perceive it for that reason, but no, I don't know. I guess it all depends on what one prefers. I do find though that in relationships, it's almost like since I'm like the calm Capricorn person, even though I guess I can also, I don't know, when I really get inspired about something, I can sort of switch to a different mode. But most of the time I'm calm. I usually actually seek out people that are like more like lively and upbeat. Like, I don't know, usually I guess water and fire signs. And I'm not just saying that because of you. I just realized that you're like a water and fire sign, but no, like literally it's usually water and fire signs that I guess am drawn to. Although I like air signs too. I can relate to air signs really well on an intellectual level since I am a Libra rising myself. But yeah, like I wouldn't I don't know. I don't think I'd picture myself with like if I found like the perfect relationship, I don't think I'd picture myself with an air sign, maybe an earth sign, but I don't know. It's hard to tell a lot of times. True, I do think Capricorn can be boring, but they're very kind, like truly warm-hearted people. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm boring. Like, I think I've got lots of exciting stuff going on, but I've got other stuff in my chart too. You know, I've got like Mars and Sagittarius. You know, Sagittarius is going to be anything but boring, but they're kind of the opposite sign to Capricorn, funny enough. But yeah, it's true. I think Capricorns are generally very, very nice people as long as like order and stuff like that is respected with them. So where were we? Session 523, April 13th, 1970, 9:13 p.m. Monday. Good evening. Good evening, Seth. We will finish chapter 4. All right. Now, I have spent some time emphasizing the fact that each of us forms our own environment because I want you to realize that the responsibility for your life and your environment is your own. If you believe otherwise, then you are limited. Your environment then represents the sum total of knowledge and experience. As long as you believe your environment to be objective and independent of yourself, then to a large extent you feel powerless to change it, to see beyond it, or to imagine other alternatives that may be less apparent. Later in the book, I will explain various methods that will allow you to change your environment beneficially and drastically. 9:23. Note the semicolon in the first sentence of the above paragraph. Seth requested that I punctuate the sentence just that way. He made such requests often while dictating this book. Let's see, and since that was pointed out, I will point it out as well. Okay, Seth put the semicolon right after the phrase, then you are limited. So right after the word limited. And so the sentence reads, if you believe otherwise, then you are limited. Your environment then represents the sum total of knowledge and experience. So, interesting stuff. I have also discussed reincarnation in terms of environment because many schools of thought overemphasize the effects of reincarnational existences, so that often they explain present life circumstances as a result of rigid and uncompromising patterns determined in a quote-unquote past life. You will feel relatively incompetent to handle present physical reality, to alter your environment, to affect and change your world, if you feel that you are at the mercy of conditions over which you have no control. Very interesting stuff. And let me focus in on this a bit more as well. I've also discussed reincarnation in terms of environment because Many schools of thought overemphasize the effects of reincarnational existences, so that often they explain present life circumstances as a result of rigid and uncompromising patterns determined in a past life. And you will feel relatively incompetent to handle present physical reality, to alter your environment, to affect and change your world if you feel that you are at the mercy of conditions over which you have no control. Yeah, Seth is basically here, I believe, critiquing and challenging this idea that we are living in this life the consequences of how we were in a past life or multiple past lives. Like, sorry, my nose is itchy. Seth is challenging that idea and basically saying that no, we are not powerless to change our reality. We can change our reality, is what he's arguing. They're boring in the sense that they don't like drama, you know? You're boring in that way, but you're very interesting in the sense that you're very wise and you know lots about mystery and such. Wait, so I'm boring because I don't like drama? Okay. I mean, I don't see myself as boring, but you know, whatever. Since you realize you know lots about mystery and such, but thank you for saying so. I hope I've attained a degree of wisdom by now, I suppose. So yeah, like, well, I mean, I think I don't like drama because I've had too much of it in my life. I see we're blurry. Like, I don't like drama because I've been like traumatized by it basically. So I mean, I don't know. I guess in that sense, things were a lot more interesting in my life years ago, but these days, I don't know. Definitely don't like. It's true. I definitely don't like drama, but it's because I've had too much of it. I'm not willing to put up with anything that doesn't feel good anymore. You look like a vampire, so there's a hint of mysterious impression about you. That's my first impression about you. Oh, cool. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think it's my pale skin and this sort of dark persona, which is actually kind of helped on camera, I think. Well, actually more so with my hair. My hair looks darker on camera. It's actually not perfectly dyed black right now. I haven't dyed it in a while. But yeah, but anyway, I guess none of this really matters. I don't really mean that. I mean a lot of people think other people are boring because they're not dramatic people. I see. Like other people would think that. Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. That's so interesting too, though, just to consider in general. Like, it's almost like a lot of humans seem almost addicted to drama and perhaps in an unhealthy way, you know? Like, I don't know. I noticed that eventually I got to a point where, especially once I started like really finding alignment with who I am, that there were certain like TV shows that I had trouble even watching because the drama in them felt so off to me. But then another part of me wonders, though, could it actually be that a lot of the spiritual stuff, and this is just a theory, I don't know, this gets into some controversial stuff, but could it be that a lot of the spiritual stuff just causes us to sort of repress like painful memories and stuff like that, and then when we see them reflected back to us, like in a TV show or a movie or something, it's really painful to watch because of that. But the solution maybe isn't to like not watch the TV show or movie. The solution is to like deal with the trauma, you know? And again, I'm not saying that's definitely the case. I'm not entirely sure either way. I'm not even saying, you know, it's definitely one or the other, but it's something I've come to consider. And I hate to say it, but I think that might actually even be the case, because I've noticed that once I dealt with a lot of my own traumas, that I was able to watch like certain shows and movies again that previously were just so painful to watch. And I guess I could give a number of examples. I don't know, like I remember when I first discovered the Lord of the Rings movies, which I discovered them very late. I don't know why. I guess I just lived that kind of screwed up life, but whatever. That's the past. This is now. But when I first discovered the Lord of the Rings movies, I loved them, but it was also hard for me to watch them because they like brought up stuff that I didn't want to face, I guess. or not that, not so much I didn't want to face, but that like, I don't know, they brought up stuff that had traumatized me, I guess. But then I noticed that once I dealt with that a lot more and got away from those like dramatic and traumatic situations for quite some time, then I was able to watch those movies again and not have it be so like gut wrenching. And the same goes for a lot of other stuff. In fact, for a long time, I actually kind of avoided really watching like any TV shows because of that, because it would actually be that, I guess, triggering perhaps would be the word. Although for some reason movies were easier to watch even then. So I don't know. But like now I feel like I could watch almost anything. So I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe it's the difference between watching something when truly in alignment and watching something when you've still got like painful stuff active in your vibration one way or another, I guess, perhaps. Right, YouTube is full of drama. I like drama, but a lot of them is just stupid. The Paul brothers, the epitome of that. Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if I wanted to, like, get a whole bunch of views and lots of watch time and everything, I could just freaking make streams or videos about drama, and that would get so much attention. But it's like, do I really want to lower myself to that? It's like, I feel very strongly that I came to this planet to stand for something more. And I'm not even wanting to invalidate those who do indulge in drama. It's just that I personally find it pretty detestable. And I'm really not interested in how do I say this? In partaking in those areas of development. I'm interested in something more deep and meaningful, at least from my perspective. But let's see, that's why your personality is easier for you to be aligned with source energy. Yeah, I think so. Because, like, I don't know if it's my having the sun conjunct Saturn in Capricorn or what, but yeah, it's true. Like, I'm just not willing to put up with feeling bad. And if there's something happening that's making me feel bad, I will do anything that I have to do to change the situation and feel better. I've learned the hard way. I've learned the very, very, very hard way, the kind of pain that no one wants to talk about and no one wants to think about, no one wants to feel. I've learned from feeling the absolute depths of powerlessness that if something feels bad, you've got to do something about it. You can't just like put up with it and expect things to be okay or whatever. Like, I've learned the hard way. I'm just not willing to put up with feeling bad when I don't have to. And if that scares anyone, thinking that, oh, they shouldn't piss me off or upset me or anything, well, it should. I will say it should. I'm not wanting to scare anyone, but I've got to be honest. I've seen what I get like when I get, angry or feel unsafe at this point after everything I've been through. And honestly, if that scares you, it should. I'm not talking to you personally, Smiley. I'm just talking to people in general. Like, if that scares people in general, it should. And that's the brutal honesty of it. Some more Capricorn stuff there, I guess. I'm a dramatic person myself, so when I'm in the middle of a dramatic situation, I feel the distress, but also the pleasure. Yes. Yeah, and like I said, like, I'm not even wanting to invalidate the like experience of drama. Like, it's perfectly valid, but I don't know. Like, see, there have been certain situations in my life that were dramatic, and I will admit this is the exception, but that I actually enjoyed in a weird way. But I enjoyed them because I felt like I was finally making progress in that area. And like, yes, it was very dramatic. It was very intense, but I was like calm and collected the whole time. And I said things that I've been waiting, like in some cases, years to say. And I was like, damn, did that feel good? And so I feel like I can still be that kind of person, who can almost enjoy it in that sense, but only because I am saying things that I believe need to be said. Like, I'm making progress in areas that progress needs to be made in. Like I'm correcting, or at least working towards correcting a situation. That's the only reason that I enjoy it. So again, that comes back to the more Capricorn thing of like wanting to, wanting to get to the bottom of things, or tell it like it is, or you get what you deserve and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, but anyway, I guess I should get back to reading. but no, this all ties in. So I'm enjoying wherever the stream goes, basically. Let's see, where were we? Okay, yeah, here we were. The reasons given for such subjugations matter little in the long run, for the reasons change with the times and with your culture. You are not under a sentence placed upon you for original sin, by any childhood events or by past life experience. Your life, for example, may be far less fulfilling than you think you would prefer. You may be less when you would be more, but you are not under a pall placed upon your psyche, either by original sin, Freud's infancy syndromes, or past life influences. That's an interesting sentence right there. You may be less when you would be more, but you are not under a pall placed upon your psyche, either by original sin, Freud's infancy syndromes, or past life influences. I will try to explain the past life influences a bit more clearly here. They affect you as any experience does. Time is not closed, however, it is open. One life is not buried in the past, disconnected from the present self and any future self as well. Parentheses. In this delivery, Jane's pace was relatively slow. End parentheses. As I explained earlier, the lives or the plays are happening at once. Creativity and consciousness are never linear achievements. In each life, you choose and create your own settings or environments. And in this one, you chose your parents and whatever childhood incidents that came within your experience. You wrote the script. 935. Like a true absent-minded professor, the conscious self forgets all this, however. So when tragedy appears in the script, difficulty or challenges, the conscious self looks for someone or something to blame. Before this book is done, I hope to show you precisely how you create each underlined minute of your experience so that you can begin to exert your true creative responsibility on a conscious level, or nearly so. As you read this book, now and then look about you at the room in which you sit. Chairs and tables, the ceilings and the floors may seem very real and solid, quite permanent, or my computer right in front of me and my webcam may seem very real and solid, quite permanent, while you, by contrast, may feel yourself to be highly vulnerable, caught in a moment between birth and extinction. You may even feel jealous when you think of it, imagining that the physical universe will continue to exist long after you are gone. By the end of our book, however, I hope you will realize the eternal validity of your own consciousness and the underlined impermanence of those physical aspects of your environment and of your universe that now seem so secure. Do you have that? Yes. That is the end of chapter 4. You may take your break. 9:44 to 10:02. All right, the end of chapter 4. Now chapter 5, which is entitled How Thoughts Form Matter Coordination Points. Ooh, this gets into some interesting technical stuff. All right, so I'm just going to take like a 1-minute breather, I guess, between chapters here. Let's see, we've been streaming for 1 hour, 43 minutes. Nice. All right. Don't know if I'll have or end up having any time left for Skyrim tonight, but I hope I do. Let's see. So yeah, Seth gets into some very interesting things indeed in this chapter. Starts explaining, if I recall correctly, the mechanics of how basically matter is formed through consciousness, as is his thesis. All right, so, and without further ado, let us continue. Chapter 5, How Thoughts Form Matter, Coordination Points. Give us a moment. A 2-minute pause followed, ending at 10:04. Chapter 5. As you read the words upon this page, you realize that the information that you are receiving is not an attribute of the letters of the words themselves. The printed line does not, underlined, contain information. It transmits information. Where underlined is the information that is being transmitted then, if it is not upon the page? Pause. The same question, of course, applies when you read a newspaper and when you speak to another person. Your actual words convey information, feelings, or thoughts. Obviously, the thoughts or the feelings and the words are not the same thing. The letters upon the page are symbols, and you have agreed upon various meanings connected with them. You take it for granted without even thinking of it that the symbols, the letters, are not the reality, the information or thoughts which they attempt to convey. Right. Why you never do a live stream on Instagram? It can be fun. We can talk to you. Oh, that could be interesting. Face to face, what I mean. Maybe I should try that. I don't know. I do know that Instagram cuts you off after an hour. I've noticed before with other people's live streams. And I guess if I'm being honest, like a big thing that I want is watch time here on YouTube, which I guess I wouldn't get if I was live streaming on Instagram. Although, if I really wanted to, I could probably do a live stream on YouTube and Instagram at the same time. So maybe I'll try that sometime. Maybe like for an open discussion stream, and then yeah, like I don't know how to do it because I've never done a live stream on Instagram before, but like I know what you mean. Like you can like have people like talk face to face or whatever, like guest people or whatever. So that would be really cool if I was like doing a live stream on YouTube and then on Instagram, and then we could have like guests like talk like that. That would be really cool. Maybe a little out of my comfort zone, I will admit. I mean, hell, just doing these live streams is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I still do them because they're so much fun. But yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can try that sometime. Like I'll do like an open discussion stream and also stream it on Instagram and like, you know, guest people, we'll see what happens. Just a fun little stream. Don't have to do it very long. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, I will. Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. I never thought of that before. Let's see. Where were we? Now, in the same way, I am telling you that objects are also symbols that stand for a reality whose meaning the objects, like the letters, transmit. The true information is not in the objects any more than the thought is underlined in the letters or in words. Words are methods of expression. So are physical objects in a different kind of medium. You are used to the idea that you express yourselves through words. You can hear yourself speak them. In fact, I can hear myself speaking them right now as I read this book. You can feel the muscles in your throat move, and if you are aware, you can perceive multitudinous reactions within your own body, actions that all accompany your speech. 1029. Physical objects are the result of another kind of expression. You create them as surely as you create words. I do not mean that you create them with your hands alone or through manufacture. I mean that objects are natural byproducts of the evolution of your species, even as words are. Examine for a moment your knowledge of your own speech, however. Though you hear the words and recognize their appropriateness, and though they may more or less approximate an expression of your feeling, they are not your feeling, and there must be a gap between your thought and your expression of it. The familiarity of speech begins to vanish when you realize this, or when you realize that you, yourself, when you begin a sentence, do not know precisely how you will end it, or even how you form the words. You do not consciously know how you manipulate a staggering pyramid of symbols, picking from them precisely those you need to express a given thought. For that matter, you do not know how you think. You do not know how you translate these symbols upon this page into thoughts and then store them or make them your own. Since the mechanisms of normal speech are so little known to you on a conscious level, then it is not surprising that you are equally unaware of more complicated tasks that you also perform, such as the constant creation of your physical environment as a method of communication and expression. It is only from this viewpoint that the true nature of physical matter can be understood. It is only by comprehending the nature of this constant translation of thoughts and desires, not into words now, but into physical objects, that you can realize your true independence from circumstance, time, and environment. Now you may take a break. Smile at 10:36. A note. I am very pleased. Wait. I just want to share this real quick, kind of good news for me. So ever since I learned to see this world for what it really is, to accept it for both good and bad, to realize that bad is essential, my life has become much better. It's a big progress I made this year in my spiritual journey. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, like, I know what you mean, though. I think, like, to accept the world for the good and the bad, yeah. Yeah, to realize that the contrast or the variety of physical reality is essential to that which physical reality is. Yeah, making peace with the contrast. I know exactly what you mean. And, like, that's not to say that I've made total peace with all of the contrasts, but just being able to make peace with a lot of it helps a lot. It goes a long way. So I think I do know what you mean there. And it is a process. it is an ongoing process. So let's see. Seth says, I am very pleased. Then Rob says, at what, Seth? And then he says, I am pleased with the beginning of my chapter, for I think I have hit upon an analogy, and a true one, that will release the reader from the artificial bondage of physical form. When he sees it as a method of his own expression, he will realize his own creativeness. So I think that one thing that Seth is getting at here, if I'm understanding him correctly, and his other material, is this idea that that like physical objects are like a byproduct of our consciousness itself, and like our physical environment is just like a natural extension, just a natural byproduct is really the best word of our consciousness itself, which is a whole different way of looking at it, you know, as if saying that, you know, just by our consciousness being what it is, the universe then is what it is. So fascinating stuff. 10:38. Jane's trance had been good, her pace rather slow. She said the 2-minute pause at the start of the delivery took place because she was consciously, quote-unquote, hung up over how Seth was going to begin chapter 5. She also realized that if she, quote-unquote, just sat there, Seth would do okay on his own. Jane had a lot of images while Seth was speaking. He had the idea for this chapter very clearly in mind, she said, and with extraordinary vividness, he was impressing her, quote-unquote, impressing her, with his idea of matter being used as a means of communication, yet she couldn't describe the images she had seen. While telling me this, Jane abruptly remembered that during part of the delivery she seemed to be standing beside the long, floor-to-ceiling bookcase that divides our living room from her workroom. This would be a distance of about 6 feet from the rocker she always uses for sessions. Jane had a quote-unquote memory now of giving part of Seth's data from the bookcase area, of seeing the living room from a different viewpoint. She didn't remember going out of her body. It came back like a dream, she said, nor could she remember any more about the episode. She didn't remember seeing herself in her chair, for instance, nor did she see me as I sat on the couch taking notes. She was very much intrigued by the idea of being out of body and able to watch herself give material for Seth. Resume at 10:56. Now, it is easy to see that you translate feelings into words or bodily expressions and gestures, but not quite as easy to realize that you underlined form your physical body as effortlessly and unself-consciously as you translate feelings into symbols that become words. Long pause at 11:01. You have heard the expression before, I am sure, that the environment expresses a particular individual's personality. I am telling you that this is a literal and not symbolic truth. The letters upon the page have the reality only of ink and paper. The information they convey is invisible, As an object, this book itself is only paper and ink. It is a carrier of information. And so I guess we could say by extension that this very live stream I'm doing is just sound and light. And what it really is a carrier of information. You may perhaps argue that the book was manufactured physically and did not suddenly erupt through Rupert's skull, already printed and bound. You in turn had to borrow or purchase the book, so you may think, quote, surely, underlined, I did not create the book, as I created my words. But before we are finished, we will see that basically speaking, each of you create the book you hold in your hands, and that your entire physical environment comes as naturally out of your inner mind as words come out of your mouths, and that man forms physical objects as unself-consciously and as automatically as he forms his own breath. As a side note, it's kind of funny that Seth says here this idea of you had to borrow or purchase the book, because this copy of Seth Speaks right here is actually a book that a friend of mine let me borrow years ago, actually in 2014, I think in the month of July. She just like introduced me to it because she knew that I was interested in this kind of stuff, and she had been reading it, and she was like, yeah, you can borrow it. And she hasn't asked for it back yet. And one time she said she's happy that it's in safe hands. So I guess I guess it works because we've got it here for the live stream. But I think it's funny how Seth says, oh, like you could say, oh, you borrowed the book. Well, I am borrowing this book. But I've also got a digital copy of it. So I guess if by some crazy chance she wanted it back before we got through it on the live streams, fear not, I do have a digital copy. Although the digital copy doesn't have all the extra notes, it just has Seth's material. But whatever. I'm sure I'll have this for as long as we need it. So, but I guess if I accept what Seth is saying, though, that basically speaking, I created this book, though, even though I borrowed it. In truth, I created it, if I accept Seth's theory here. So interesting to consider. Okay, and then he just says, end of dictation for this evening. Smile. Good night, Seth, and thank you. 11:14 p.m. All right, so that's that session. Well, we are coming up on the 2-hour mark here in 3 minutes, and so I think I'm probably going to wrap it up around that time, since I started this so much later than I originally intended. But it's been fun, and I will be back on Wednesday with another special live stream having to do with astrology. And of course, a week from tonight, I'll be back as long as everything goes according to plan, as long as nothing stops me, with another Seth Speaks live stream. Or maybe I should say Seth Streams. From Seth Speaks to Seth Streams. Now, let's see. Session 524, April 20th, 1970, 9:18 p.m. Monday. Jane didn't feel particularly well this evening, but decided to sit for a session to see what developed. When she began speaking, her pace was quite slow and her eyes were closed most of the time. Good evening, Seth. Now for our book. The peculiar, particular aspects of your physical world are dependent upon your existence and focus within it. The physical universe does not contain physical objects of solidity, width, and depth, for example, to those whose existence is not within it. Wait, did you sleep or you're just going to bed now? Oh, well, I slept, like, well, I guess it depends what you mean by that. Like, I'm going to sleep, but not for a number of hours yet. But I got up very late. Like, I mentioned this briefly at the beginning of the stream, but before you were here. But like, there were several things that delayed me today. But one thing was waking up with my eye like all messed up, and so I went back to sleep for that reason, and that was part of what delayed me. And yeah, like originally I was going to be here much sooner, like 7 or 8 hours sooner, but it just didn't work out that way. But I was like, well, I said I was going to stream tonight, so I'm going to make that happen one way or another, and so I did. So hopefully next week hopefully next week I can be here at a much more ideal time, and then I can stay on for much longer, as long as my voice holds out reading for, like 6 hours or whatever it ends up being. Okay, let's see. Other kinds of consciousness coexist within the same quote-unquote space that your world inhabits. They do not perceive your physical objects, for their reality is composed of a different camouflage structure. You do not perceive them, and generally speaking, they do not perceive you. This underlined is a general statement, however, for various points of your realities can and do coincide, so to speak. These points are not recognized as such, but they are points of what you could call double reality, containing great energy potential, coordinate points, indeed, where realities merge. There are main coordinate points, underlined pure mathematically, sources of fantastic energy, and subordinate coordinate points, vast in number. So it gets a little complicated here, so I'm going to go over this paragraph again. Try to make this clear for people. These points are not recognized as such, but they are points of what you could call double reality, containing great energy potential, coordinate points, indeed, where realities merge. There are main coordinate points, pure mathematically, sources of fantastic energy, and subordinate coordinate points, vast in number. Long pause at 9:29. There are 4 absolute coordinate points that intersect underlined all realities. These coordinate points also act as channels through which energy flows, and as warps or invisible paths from one reality to another. They also act as transformers and provide much of the generating energy that makes creation continuous in your terms. Many pauses. Your space is filled with these subordinate points, and as you will see later, these are important in allowing you to transform thoughts and emotions into physical matter. When a thought or emotion attains a certain intensity, it automatically attracts the power of one of these subordinate points, and is therefore highly charged, and in one way magnified, though not in size. These points impinge upon what you call time, as well as space. There are certain points in time and space, therefore, again in your terms, that are more conducive than others, where both ideas and matter will be more highly charged. Practically speaking, this means that buildings will last longer in your context. That ideas wedded to form will be relatively eternal. The pyramids, for example, are a case in point. I'm going to see how much longer this session is. Okay, not too much longer. But yeah, since I kind of messed that up, he said, practically speaking, this means that buildings will last longer. In your context, that ideas wedded to form will be relatively eternal. The pyramids, for example, are a case in point. So I think what he's saying is that basically, like such structures that are built like upon these coordination points, let's see, that are more conducive than others, where both ideas and matter would be more highly charged. Yeah, like buildings and structures built upon these coordination points or somehow in harmony with these coordination points will have more strength, more integrity, they'll last longer, stuff like that. They are beneficial in that respect, is what Seth is saying. Slow at 9:43. These coordinate points, absolute, main, or subordinate, represent accumulations or traces of pure energy, underlined minute to an extreme if you are thinking in terms of size, smaller than any particle of which your scientists know, for example, but composed of pure energy, and yet this energy must be activated. It is dormant until then, and it cannot be activated physically. 9:50. Now, a few clues here that might help you, or mathematicians. There is an ever so minute alteration of gravity forces in the neighborhood of all of these points, even of the subordinate ones, and all the so-called physical laws to some extent or another will be found to have a wavering effect in these neighborhoods. The subordinate points also serve in a way as supports, as structural intensifications within the unseen fabric of energy that forms all realities and manifestations. While they are traces or accumulations of pure energy, there is a great difference between the amount of energy available in the various subordinate points and between the main and absolute points. See, there's a great difference between the amount of energy available in the various subordinate points and between the main and absolute points. Interesting. So I think he's basically saying the main and absolute points are more powerful, basically speaking, than the subordinate points. You may take your break. 9:57. Jane felt better now. She was surprised when I told her the delivery had been so slow. Entranced, she is unaware of her pauses or of their number. I haven't any sense of time then, she said. My space is filled. I don't know how else to put it. Resume in the same manner at 10:17. That's the last of my tea. We're blurry. There we go. These are points, therefore, of concentrated energy. The subordinate points are far more common, and practically speaking, affect your daily concerns. There are better places than others to build houses or structures, points where health and vitality are strengthened, where, other things being equal, plants will grow and flourish, and where all beneficial conditions seem to meet. Some people can sense such neighborhoods instinctively. They occur within certain angles made by coordinate points. The points obviously are not themselves physical, that is, they are not visible, though they may be mathematically deduced. They are felt, however, as intensified energy. 10:23. In a given room, plants will grow more effectively in a particular area than in other areas, providing that both areas contain such necessary requirements as light. All of your space is permeated by these coordination points, so that certain invisible angles are formed. 10:26. This is highly simplified, but some angles will be more, quote, on the outskirts, end quote, than others, and will be less favorable for all conditions of growth and activity. In speaking of these angles, we will treat them as three-dimensional, though they are, of course, multidimensional. Since the nature of these angles is not the main topic of my book, it is not possible to explain them thoroughly here. They will seem to be stronger during certain times than other times, though these differences have nothing to do with either the nature of the coordinate points or with the nature of time. Other elements affect them, but we need not be concerned with these now. 10:31. The concentrated energy points are activated by emotional intensities that are well within your normal range. Your own emotions or feelings will activate these coordinates whether you know of them or not. Greater energy will therefore be added to the original thought or feeling, and its projection into physical matter accelerated. Now this applies regardless of the nature of the feeling, only its intensity is involved here. These points are like invisible power plants, in other words, activated when any emotional feeling or thought of sufficient intensity comes into contact. The points themselves intensify whatever activates them in a quite natural manner, or in a quite neutral manner. So the points themselves intensify whatever activates them in a quite neutral manner. We are rather slow with this material, since it is new, but mainly because I would like it translated into as precise terms as possible, and without a scientific background on Rupert's part, I must use ingenuity. You may take a break. 10:39 to 11:14. Now, this is highly simplified, but the subjective experience of any consciousness is automatically expressed as electromagnetic energy units. These exist, quote-unquote, beneath the range of physical matter. They are, if you prefer, incipient particles that have not yet emerged into matter. These units are natural emanations from all kinds of consciousness. They are the invisible formations resulting from reaction to any kind of stimuli. They very seldom exist in isolation, but unite under certain laws. They change both their form and their pulsation. Their relative, quote-unquote, duration depends upon the original intensity behind them. That is, behind the original thought, emotion, stimuli, or reaction that brought them into being. 11:21. Again, highly simplified here. Under certain conditions, these coagulate into matter. Those electromagnetic units of high enough intensity automatically activate the subordinate coordinate points of which I have spoken. They are, therefore, accelerated and propelled into matter far more quickly, in your terms, than units of lesser intensity. Molecules would appear as large as planets to these units. Atoms and molecules and planets in these electromagnetic energy units are simply different manifestations of the same principles that bring the units themselves into being. It is only your relative position, your focus within an apparent space and time, that makes this seem so unlikely. Each thought or emotion, therefore, exists as an electromagnetic energy unit or as a combination of these under certain conditions, and often with the help of coordinate points. They emerge into the building blocks of physical matter. This emergence into matter occurs as a neutral, quote-unquote, result, regardless of the nature of any given thought or emotion. Mental images, accompanied by strong emotion, are blueprints, therefore, upon which a corresponding physical object or condition or event will, in your terms, appear. Now, end of dictation. Do you have questions? No. We are doing very well with our Chapter 5. My heartiest regards and a fond good evening. Good night, Seth, and thank you very much. 11:32 p.m. All right, that concludes that session. And, it just so happens that we are extremely close to Chapter 6, so I guess I'll finish this out. Any comments or questions before I continue? I'll just take like 30 seconds here and then continue. And it's very interesting how Seth is basically here talking about what he would call like the building blocks of matter, and saying that they are formed, or that they are consciousness and units of consciousness that then form matter in this way. So it's very fascinating. All right, let's see here. No questions or comments right now? Okay. Session 525, April 22nd, 1970, 9:14 p.m. Wednesday. Seth's dictation on his book tonight was preceded by 4 pages of personal material that we have deleted. Resume after break at 10:03. The intensity of a feeling or thought or mental image is, therefore, the important element in determining its subsequent physical materialization. The intensity is the core about which the electromagnetic energy units form. In your terms, the more intense the core, the sooner the physical materialization. This would apply whether the mental image was a fearful one or a joyful one. Now, there is a very important problem here. If your turn of mind is highly intense and you think in vivid mental emotional images, these will be swiftly formed into physical events. If you are also of a highly pessimistic nature, given to thoughts and feelings of potential disaster, then these thoughts will be quite faithfully reproduced in experience. So there you go, Seth affirming it right then and there, saying, when you focus on something, it manifests. If you focus upon it with intensity, then it's given that much more energy to manifest. It's going to manifest even more, even faster, stuff like that. The more intense your imagination and inner experience, therefore, the more important it is that you realize the methods by which this inner experience becomes physically real. Your thoughts and emotions begin their journey into physical actualization at the moment of conception. If you happen to live in an area where the coordinate environment is strong, one of those areas I have spoken of as unusually conducive, then it will seem that you are deluged by illnesses or disasters, if these are the nature of your thoughts, because underlined all thought is so fertile in this environment. Let's see, and that's he's saying if you happen to live in an area where the coordinate environment is strong. Yes, one of the most unusually conducive ones. Interesting. If, on the other hand, your feelings and subjective experience are fairly well balanced, fairly optimistic and creative in a constructive manner, then it will seem to you that you have been blessed with unusual luck, for your pleasant suppositions will come to pass so quickly. Briefly, in your own country, the West Coast, portions of the East Coast, Utah, the Great Lakes, the Chicago area, the Minneapolis area, and some other southwestern areas are in those neighborhoods of excellent coordinate activity for the reasons given. And that's obviously within the United States, where those channeling and taking the dictation for this material were located at that time in New York, in fact. And it's interesting that Seth mentions the Great Lakes, because where I am is not very far at all, really, from Lake Erie, part of the Great Lakes system. So I don't know if I'm in the range or region of the highly conducive coordinate points, that area of them or not, but I kind of wouldn't be surprised based on how my life has gone, but who knows. Materialization will quickly appear, and potentials, therefore, for both constructive and destructive elements are high. 1020. Give us a moment. These coordinate points themselves activate the behavior of atoms and molecules as, say, for example, the sun aids the growth of plants. The coordinates activate the generating behavior of atoms and molecules and greatly encourage their cooperative abilities, their tendency to swarm, so to speak, into organizations and structural groupings. The coordinate points magnify or intensify the behavior, the latent spontaneity inherent within the properties of physical matter. Wait a minute, let's see. They magnify or intensify the behavior, the latent spontaneity inherent within the properties of physical matter. Interesting. Yeah, so they're kind of like the planet Jupiter in astrology, magnifying everything it touches. They act as psychic generators, propelling what is not yet physical into physical form. Now you may take your break. 10:25 to 10:38. Wait, I have to leave now. Good stream. All right, Smiley, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be leaving in literally another couple of minutes anyway, because the chapter's almost over. So thank you for being basically my only viewer for this whole stream. It'll be going up on my channel after, but indeed, while it's been live, you've been almost the only viewer the whole time from what I've been seeing. So thank you, and have a great day. Now, this is not to be a technical book, so this is not the time nor place to discuss thoroughly the action, behavior, or effects of these coordinate points, nor of the electromagnetic energy units, those natural emanations of consciousness of which I spoke. I want it known, however, that thoughts and emotions are formed into physical matter by very definite methods, and through laws quite valid, though they may be presently unknown. In other portions of the Seth material, these processes will be made very clear for those of you who desire to pursue the question further, or those who may be interested from a scientific point of view. Here, we are discussing such issues only because they touch upon the multidimensional aspect of personality. They allow you to materialize certain subjective experiences into three-dimensional reality. Before I leave the subject, however, let me remind you that these emanations in varying degrees rise from underlined all consciousness, not simply your own. This includes cellular consciousness as well, so that an invisible network of electromagnetic units pervades your entire atmosphere, and upon this webwork and from it, the particles of physical matter are then formed. Now, a whole book could easily be written upon this subject. Information regarding the quote-unquote locations of main and absolute coordinate points could be highly advantageous. For example, you pride yourselves on your technology and the production of durable goods, buildings, and roads, yet many of these are insignificant when compared to other structures within the quote-unquote past. A true understanding of the way in which an idea becomes physical matter would result in a complete revamping of your so-called modern technology, and in buildings, roads, and other structures that would far outlast those you now have. While the psychic reality behind physical matter is ignored, then you cannot use those methods effectively that do exist, nor can you take advantage of them. You cannot understand the psychic reality that is the true impetus for your physical existence unless you first realize your own psychic reality and independence from physical laws. My first purpose, therefore, is to make you aware of the inner identity of which you are part, and to clear away some of the intellectual and superstitious debris that prevents you from recognizing your own potentialities and freedom. Then perhaps you can begin to learn the many ways in which that freedom can be used. That is the end of dictation. It may well be the end of chapter 5. You may end the session or take a break if you prefer. We'll take the break then. 10:58 p.m. It developed that this was the end of the session. We were both tired. Jane's pace had been considerably faster than last session. Her eyes closed much of the time. All right, that is the end of chapter 5. Next time we will resume, of course, on chapter 6, which is entitled The Soul and the Nature of Its Perception. Should be very delicious and interesting indeed. So, again, I want to thank Smiley Wolf especially for being here, and the one or two others that I think came in briefly, at least from what I saw from the view counter during the stream. Although I think the view counter isn't always completely accurate. And of course, indeed, this is going up on my channel after, so people who watch it when it's not live, I want to thank you for watching, I guess, all of it at this point. I highly recommend, again, paying special attention to what I said at the beginning of the stream about the importance of mental health challenges and stuff like that. I made some good points there that I guess I want people to hear. And I will be back on Wednesday with an astrology forecast, with one that we just sort of do live, and we'll see how that goes for December of 2018. And then, of course, on Saturday, it's back to the tarot. We'll be looking at the Hierophant card. And then Monday, back to Seth Speaks. So thanks so much, everyone. This has been fun, even with the various distortions, like with my eye bugging me and all this stuff. And even though it's been short-lived, hopefully next time it will be much longer. Thanks again, and have a great day or night wherever you are.